Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So today, after trying to set my camera up for about half an hour, we're finally recording, and I'm going to touch on some frequently asked questions I get asked regarding gaining phases. And basically, I'll be trying to give you somewhat of a blueprint and put all these questions to rest when it comes to knowing what to do when you're in a gaining phase. So, to start off in terms of like a quick update on myself. Again, not much has changed, but I'd just like to thank everyone for the support with the podcast because I've been getting a few people messaging me saying like it's valuable to them or they've been listening to all the episodes of that, and it's greatly appreciated. It helps massively in terms of just make me want to keep firing out more content when it comes to it. Something I really enjoy because you can only give someone so much value in an Instagram post or in any other form of content. Whereas with podcasts, you feel like you're really making an impact, making a difference because you've got more time to give a bit more in depth content. So, yeah, jumping into the episode, why why I'm making this is just due to a lot of questions on how to do this, how to do that when it comes to gaining phase. So I just thought I'd answer all the questions in a podcast because I believe it can help people a lot. Not only know why to do a certain thing, but also just so you're doing or executing a gain phase as effectively as possible, and not just packing on body fat for no reason. So the reason we want to execute a gaining phase or carry out a gaining phase is because when we're in a gaining phase, that is where we build muscle best. So if you're wanting to maximize muscle growth, it makes sense to commit time to being in a gaining phase. Simple as that, because maintenance phases are where we maintain our physique for the most part. Yes, you can gain muscle, but not nearly as much because you're not giving your body the building blocks to build that muscle, to put it simple. It's like if we've got a surplus of calories, meaning more calories than we need, then we're giving our body a reason to build muscle. We're giving it what it needs to build muscle and make it stick. Whereas if we're not, then yes, we can lose some fat, build some muscle, but it's much harder to do so. And then in terms of why else we should do it, not only does like being in a gain phase give our body that surplus of calories, but when we're heavier, when we gain weight, we are a bit more stable in the gym and we can progress our lifts easier as a result of that with having a wee bit of body fat on us. So your performance, not only from having the excess calories point of view, but being a bit more stable, having that excess body fat can help. Which is why you might see powerlifters that aren't super lean. They might have a wee bit of a belly or that without being rude. Or they might be, you know what I mean, a bit on the heavier side, but it's because weight moves weight to an extent. So it can help with your ability to progress your strength up. And it can also be beneficial entering a gaining phase to try and work your calories up to an appropriate level to sit at and live at comfortably. Because like if someone comes to me and they do a dieting phase, it's like when they finish the dieting phase, the calories aren't always super high or at a super sustainable place, and it's just because that's what that's what you have to do if you want to diet. You need to eat less calories, and your body adapts to that. So it's a way to work your calories up higher and set them at a comfortable level for you to just chill at and not have to track really accurately or worry about your hunger. And again, you maybe tackle that a bit different than a standard gaining phase to build muscle, but I'm not going to get into that too much because it's kind of going off topic. But first thing I'm going to jump into is rate of gain when it comes to a gaining phase. So when it comes to rate of gain, I can't give a definite answer. I know people like definite answers. People don't like it depends because it's harder. It doesn't give them a set thing to follow. And that's because everyone is individual, everyone is different, and it depends who's listening to this, how long have you been training for, how consistent are you when it comes to the gym, what's your goals, what your time frame is. So much things are taken into consideration. If I had to say, if you're like, right, put a gun to my head, what bit of extreme scenario, but what rate of gain should I gain at if I want to build muscle and enter a gaining phase? A 1% of your body weight per month is an alright place to start. So that means if you're 80 kilograms, gaining 0.8 kilos a month is a not bad place to start. And that is, to be fair, you could go a wee bit faster than that, but again, it depends like what stage your gaining phase you're at, and how long have you trained for? Because someone who's trained for 10 years isn't going to be able to put muscle on as fast as someone who's new to lifting. It's two very different positions to be in. The person who's trained for 10 years, they might want to have a slower approach because they're not going to gain the same amount of muscle as someone who's new to lifting. Whereas someone who's new to lifting, if they take a very, very gradual approach, they could be limiting how much progress they could make, especially in the early years when you can make a ton of progress. So yeah, that's just an example of things differ, and there's there's benefits limitations of either side of the spectrum. Like I said, too slow you're limiting your progress, but too fast means you'll just get fat and then have to take body fat off, to have to take more of it off, have to do it maybe sooner. And like I said, it depends on the above and also how you're looking visually. So yep, I can give you these rules, like if you're trained for longer, go slower, that sort of thing. But how are you looking visually? Because that is the best way to analyze it. Like if you're, let's say you are gaining, let's say you go with 1% of your body weight per month, but you're getting leaner, and you know, right, I want to finish this gaining phase by a certain date. Then you'll think, right, well, should you gain at a bit of a faster rate if you're literally looking leaner? You could say don't fix anything that's not broken, but you could also say, are you selling yourself short when it comes to progress? And the thing is, there's never truly a answer to that. It's like you never know if you're doing the right thing or not. You can make your best guess. You can, yeah, just make an educated decision, but you can never know truly if you're doing 100% the right thing when it comes to it. But yeah, 1% of your body weight per month, and analyze visually. How are you looking on a weekly basis? How are you looking on a monthly basis? Are you progressing? Are you building muscle? Are you putting on a lot of fat fast? Analyze all these things and let that influence your decision. And also, like I said, it depends on how long you want to be in a gaining phase for, because you might have a end goal in mind, and that's something to consider. And as well as that, if you've got a holiday, then you might want to diet down for your holiday. Not that you need to, not that you necessarily should, or it's the right thing to gain as much muscle as possible, but everyone's goals are different. So yeah, it depends on that. And it also depends your rate of gain on how consistent you are. For example, if you're someone who gets poor sleep, goes out at the weekend, doesn't really track super accurately, and misses sessions, if you're having the same rate of gain of someone who executes everything to the absolute T, does everything they're supposed to, ticks all their boxes, then you're probably going to gain more fat if you're the first person not as consistent as the second person who nails absolutely everything. They're probably going to gain more of that body weight as muscle. So that's another thing to consider in terms of how fast to gain it. How's your consistency? So yeah, going on to duration. If you've got, let's say, there's a lot of things that again that impacts your duration. It could be if you've got a holiday, if you've got an end goal, or if you know you've got a dieting phase at a certain point. And also, it depends how much you want to gain. So let's say you do know you've got to diet, then you might not want to run a gaining phase for a good year and a half before that, because the longer you're in a gaining phase for, the more fat you gain. And not that you should shy away from gaining a bit of body fat, but just bear it in mind. And sometimes it's easy to think, right, I'm fine, I've not gained that much body fat, I'll just keep going, I'll keep going. But sometimes you are gaining more body fat than you think. And in terms of what else should define the duration, is just if everything's going well, then, and you don't really have anything you want to look good for, diet down for, then you could just look out for signs to pull back. But if there's no signs to pull back, then don't change anything. Don't try and fix anything that's not broken. Just keep at it, because again, phase is where you'll make the most progress and where your time is spent best. But in terms of some signs to pull back, you could consider your body fat. So is your body fat getting just silly high, like too high? Like you've got no definition, you can't see your abs, you've got no vascularity at all, meaning you can't see your veins, and you can't see the outline of your muscles very well, then that could be a sign, right, I might be better to pull back now. Or it could be poor performance. Do you feel like you've just got no energy, or you're not really getting much from gaining that body weight, and you're just feeling a bit meh in the gym, like you're not in a great spot to perform because your body fat? That's something else to consider. And again, time restriction as well. So if you've got something coming up, and also poor pumps. So the reason why we want to, or not we want to, you may want to think about if you're getting a good pump in the gym, is a pump is a sign that we are have or utilizing carbohydrates well. We're sensitive to insulin, in other words. And the reason we want to is because if we're not very sensitive to carbs, then more of the weight we gain is gonna go on as body fat. And in terms of how we gain that sensitivity to carbs back, how we absorb carbs and utilize them well, you can you can play about doing things like sleeping well is shown to help it, things like that, and getting steps in, you know what I mean, not just sitting on your bum all day. But for the most part, they're going to have very minimal effects. The main thing that's going to have the most effect is just being leaner. Entering a dieting phase will do so. So if you feel like you never ever ever get a pump and your performance is poor, then that could be a sign to pull back. And something else to consider is, will you benefit from gaining more? Will you benefit from shoving on an extra couple kilos or 5 kilos? Because if you're thinking, right, I've gained what I need to gain, I'm not really getting much more from gaining. Like, you could look at, right, the last 5 kilos, let's say you gained 5 kilos. Out of that last 5 kilos, I've managed to put 5 kilos on my deadlift. Is that worth it? Is that going to make that much of a difference in my progress gaining another 5? If not, then that could be a sign not to keep pushing. And something else is hunger and your digestion. So if your hunger is super, super low, then you may be struggling to keep gaining, keep eating. So you could pull back a wee bit, you know what I mean? Do a short diet and then go back into a gaining phase. Or if your digestion's poor, then that is also a sign you might want to pull back. But saying that, if you're trying to eat a lot of calories and gain, your digestion is probably going to be poor at some point. If it's from not choosing foods that sit well, if it's from having some off-plan meals, if it's from just having something you don't agree with you, uh, just because you've got some digestive issues, like as soon as you, let's say, have some issues, doesn't mean you have to pull back straight away, because a lot of things go into it, like I just spoke about. But for the most part, it's a sign if your digestion is poor. It's a sign something is up. If it's you're eating things that don't sit well with you or what. But it could also be a sign of just your body needs a break from pushing a lot of food down. But if you're let's say if you're a relatively light individual and you don't have a high amount of body fat, then and you're not eating a lot of calories, you probably won't have that issue. But yeah, so that could be dependent on some individuals, and for the most part not an issue. But look out for that as well. And again, there's so much things to consider. It's not like a yes or no answer if you should pull back or only gain for so and so amount of time or what. But just remember, the more you gain, the more you have to pull off, and that is something to definitely take into consideration. And in terms of a few bits of advice, some tips, and a few other points I wanted to talk about is, yeah, like you have to take it off again. So if you're gaining a lot of weight, if you're doing like a big bulk, are you comfortable taking it off? Meaning, are you sure you can commit and be consistent to a dieting phase and be able to carry it out effectively? because it's all fine and good like gaining it, but if you can't have the consistency, the dedication to take it off again, then you don't want to be stuck with a high level of body fat when you don't need to be. And another thing to consider is, yes, it can't always be super fun, not being lean. It's sometimes a bit, not boring, but a bit rubbish when other people are dieting that. But just remember, long term, this will grant you the most progress if you are gaining or considering it. So that's something I'd take into consideration, because yes, you can diet, but you don't make any progress when you're dieting, or very little anyway. Same with sitting at maintenance. So just remember that if you're ever feeling bored, and focus on performance. Set yourself performance goals when you're in a gaining phase, and that should hopefully motivate you and keep you wanting to progress, keep you wanting to move forward, and it does for me anyway. And I covered things like how fast should you gain, what duration should you gain at, or when should you pull back. Use me if you want. If you want a second eye, if you want to go over anything and make sure you're doing the right thing, then just drop me a message on Instagram or whatever other platform you follow me on. And if you don't have me on it, the link is always in the bio of the podcast post. So yeah, have a look and then drop me a message, and I'll happily give you some advice in terms of if you should keep gaining, if you shouldn't, and just answer any other questions. I'm more than happy to do so. And for the most part, the more consistent you are, the more progress you'll make. So make sure, if you are in a gaining phase, make sure your actions reflect your goals on what you want to achieve. Because if you have, let's say, if you half ass it, sorry, then your progress will reflect it. With just being brutally honest, you know what I mean. If you want to maximize your progress, then you need to maximize your consistency, because there's a lot of people who like think a gaining phase is time where you take your foot off the gas and be a bit more flexible. Yeah, it definitely is. You can go for meals out, you can do things like that, and enjoy food, enjoy your time. You don't have to live in a box all year round when you're gaining and dieting. But if you aren't consistent, if you're constantly missing sessions, if you're constantly just I don't know, changing your exercises, not watching what you're eating, and not paying attention to just all the factors you should be taking into consideration, and then when you diet down, you then switch it on and you're right, time to be consistent, time to get the foot on the gas, then you will not gain much muscle. Because when you are in a deficit, that's not when you gain the muscle. So if that's the only time when you are consistent and you are switched on and trying to nail everything, then you will not have a lot of muscle to reveal, sadly. uh, Again, if you don't want to gain a ton of muscle, then that's fine. But I'm just trying to manage people's expectations. So yeah, I hope this episode was valuable to yourself. Again, any questions, please let me know. And thank you very much for tuning in if you made it to the end. Greatly appreciate everyone's support as always. And yeah, share it on your story if you enjoyed it. Leave me a rating and review, please, and drop me a follow if you don't already. Have a great day, everyone.